This is yet another example of why, as a fighter, you should not be loyal to any promoter, and you should not expect them to be loyal to you. It's business at the end of the day, and if you take it as friendship, you're likely to end up very disappointed. Now, I say all this in relation to Billy Joe Saunders, who did this interview on IFL TV, in which he expressed his frustration, his dissatisfaction with the way he's being treated in the run-up to this fight against Canelo Alvarez. He says he originally signed for this fight under the proviso that there would be at least one British judge. Also, the money that he agreed to for this fight was based upon there not being any crowd. But now there's going to be 70,000. So the inference he's making is that he's not being offered any more money, despite the fact that there's a big crowd in attendance. So you can see why he would be aggrieved and why he'd be upset. You can see just in his mannerisms and body language that this is really upset him. He says he wants to talk to Eddie Hearn. He says he's not convinced by the excuses that he's been given at the moment for there not being a British judge, for, the crowd situation. I don't know whether he is being offered more money because of the crowds. Maybe he is. I'm just saying that that's the inference he seems to be making, or else why would it be an issue whether there's crowds? I mean, most boxers like there to be a crowd. Now, I know some people are going to say Billy Joe should stop moaning. He's already making excuses before the fight has happened. I beg to differ, because Billy Joe Saunders is a boxer. This is not a guy, certainly not at the highest level, who is known to be a knockout artist. Canelo Alvarez not only has a very solid chin, but he's also got a very good defense. It's difficult to nail this guy with more than one shot at a time. So Billy Joe Saunders, realistically, if he's going to have any chance at all of winning, it's almost certainly going to be on points, or maybe he manages to cut Canelo and win that way. But most likely on points, and therefore the judging is absolutely crucial to him. It's crucial that it's fair and there's no funny business going on. And when you look at Canelo Alvarez's history, he has got a lot, or several, let me not say a lot, but several contentious decisions, that have gone his way. And not only was there several contentious decisions, but even in fights that were close, like let's say the Miguel Cotto fight, somehow the judges' scorecards were wide. And the most glaring example of judges showing blatant favoritism towards Canelo would be the Floyd Mayweather fight, where Canelo was beaten comprehensively on the scorecards, but yet one of the judges, I think, had it a draw. So there's a long history of this kind of thing with Canelo. And if you're a guy who's looking to go in there and try and outbox him, then you're surely going to be pretty upset if you can't get at least one judge from your country sat there with the other two. So Billy Joe, at the end of the day, he knew what he was getting into, I'm sure. And he kind of alludes to that in this video. He says he's a big boy. He understands how business goes. But he does express disappointment in Eddie Hearn not being a man of his word in terms of delivering the situation that he had agreed to. And he said that we'll see what's what after the fight. And that, to me, is kind of suggestive of Billy Joe possibly parting ways with Eddie Hearn after the fight. Now look, Eddie Hearn is a great promoter. There's no point in denying that. If you deny that, then you are delusional. He's a great promoter. But that doesn't mean that he's the best promoter for every single fighter in every situation at every time. No. There are going to be certain fighters in certain situations at certain times in their career who would be better off with somebody else. Sauerland, Frank Warren, Bob Arum, PBC. Eddie Hearn is not the best guy for every fighter at every time. And so, with Billy Joe Saunders, he's going to have to weigh up the pros and cons in terms of remaining with Eddie Hearn, assuming that he's out of contract after this fight. The pros being, Eddie Hearn can get you opportunities. I mean, look how long Billy Joe Saunders was with Frank Warren, and Frank Warren couldn't deliver him a big fight. But yet he's, 2 fights in with Eddie Hearn? Is it 1 fight or 2 fights in? And he's got him the Canelo fight already. So, Hearn can deliver you the big fights. But of course, you're a pretty small fish in a very large pond when you're with Eddie Hearn because he's got so many fighters. He's an international promoter. He does have the likes of Anthony Joshua, Canelo Alvarez, and so on. Now, when Billy Joe first signed with Eddie Hearn, they seemed to be very pally. Lots of banter back and forth, and there appeared to be banter back and forth between them even before he signed with Eddie Hearn. And Hearn is a very charismatic guy, very personable individual. But you can't allow that to blind you to the reality that Eddie Hearn is being pally and whatever with you as a fighter because he sees potential there in terms of making money for himself and his business. That's ultimately what it comes down to. And this is how the vast majority of promoters are. Now, with a Frank Warren or a Bob Arum, in some instances, they're not as personable as Eddie Hearn. So you might not get lured into thinking that this is anything more than a business relationship. It's not a friendship. It's just a business relationship. But with Hearn, sometimes fighters get lured in because he is very charismatic and friendly and one of the boys. That's the way he comes across. And you can see in Billy Joe that he's disappointed now that he's found out that that's really all, I don't want to say necessarily a front, but it's a very paper-thin friendship, if it is a friendship at all. Because as soon as Canelo Alvarez has come along, well, Eddie Hearn has almost forgotten who Billy Joe Saunders is. He's planning Canelo's fights after Billy Joe. I mean, what does that tell you? That tells you that Eddie Hearn's loyalty comes with a price tag. It can be bought, basically, in a roundabout way. Canelo Alvarez makes him a lot more money than Billy Joe makes him. And on top of that, I have to imagine that Eddie Hearn believes Canelo Alvarez is probably going to win this fight. So he's far more attentive to Canelo than he is to Billy Joe. So it is what it is. Billy Joe feels aggrieved, and I can understand why. But at the end of the day, as I've said on this channel for years and years, if you're a fighter, you should not be loyal to any promoter because they're not going to be loyal to you. As soon as you've outlived your usefulness, they'll stop calling you. We've heard countless fighters now who have come out and said after they took a loss, Eddie Hearn stopped calling them. And look, it's not just Eddie Hearn, it's most promoters will behave in this way. Now, I do find it, I want to say unprofessional. It's not quite as bad as when Frank Warren was promoting the Daniel Dubois Joe Joyce fight, because he came out and said he's backing Daniel all the way. And yes, he promotes both fighters, but it's no secret where his true loyalties lie and who he wants to win the fight. I thought that was really off by Frank Warren to do that. With Eddie Hearn, he's not being as overt in terms of just coming straight out and saying, yes, I want Canelo to win. He's the guy I'm really backing. He's not being as overt about it. But you can still tell that's the case. Now, to be fair, with Frank Warren, he had Daniel Dubois from the start. So I guess his get out clause would be, I've been with Daniel from the start. Joe only signed with me recently. So obviously I'm going to be more loyal to the guy who I've been with longer. Whereas with Eddie Hearn, he's been with Billy Joe, certainly not for long, but longer than he's been with Canelo. But yet his loyalty seems to be for Canelo rather than Billy Joe at this point. So it is what it is. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. I'm sure there's going to be a whole heap of people saying it doesn't matter anyway. Billy Joe couldn't win even with fair officiating. But that's not the point, folks. The point is, you should have, if you got a world title fight, unification, there should be a judge from each guy's country and then a neutral judge, shouldn't there? Why would you be against that? Why do you not think that that should be a requirement for every fight like this? Because when you don't have that, it sets a bad precedent. So I think Billy Joe's got plenty of cause for concern and grievance here. And as I say, with regards to the crowd situation, I don't know what's going on there. Maybe he can iron it out with Hearn. But the officiating, that's a legitimate complaint as far as I'm concerned because of Canelo's history and because of Billy Joe Saunders' style. So let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Come and join me on Patreon and access my weekly no-holds-barred, censorship-free podcast where we lift the lid on a wide range of controversial topics. It's not mainstream friendly, it's not politically correct, but that's the whole point. We dare to stand as a beacon of reason against an army of insanity. Just head on over to my Patreon page and select the tier called Hatman Hot Topics. You'll gain access to a minimum of 2 hours of exclusive content every single week, including podcasts, videos, interviews, live stream Q&A sessions, as well as my popular Confessions of a Nightclub Bouncer series. Not to mention a vast back catalog of hundreds of hours of previous episodes. You can listen via the Patreon app with the option to download in high quality MP3. We've also got a Discord server where you can come and chat and hang out with myself and other members. There's no contract, no commitment, and you can cancel at any time. So come and join our community of free and critical thinkers by signing up with me here on Patreon today.